All right, go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and happy holidays. Welcome to today's program. Our listeners across the diaspora and across the African continent, on the various social media platforms, I welcome you to this end-of-year edition of the Sankofa African Affairs Global and Current Affairs webinars organized by Bella Associates Consulting LLC, Ghana and the US. My name is Dr. Gloria Ajami Makoha, your host for today's program. I am currently in Uppsala, Sweden, as a postdoctoral fellow, and I am a lecturer at Kenyatta University, Kenya. Today is Friday, the 27th of December, 2024, 5 p.m. East African time and 9 a.m. EST. I will be co-hosting today's program with Dr. Sally Bumien, a women, youth, peace and security advocate, researcher, policy influencer, analyst, and executive director, Common Action for Gender Development in Bamenda, Cameroon. Dr. Sally, you're welcome.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Gloria. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. My name is Salim Bumien. I am a women, peace and security advocate, as Gloria rightly put. I'm interested in policy issues, gender issues, and equality for all, and social inclusion for all is something that is interesting to me. Today, I am co-hosting with my sister Gloria as we discuss on the issues concerning gender-based violence and looking at it at a perspective of human security, the role of activists in all of these conversations. As promised during the last session, last week, for those who joined us, we said we're going to deepen this conversation further and move through the continent, which today we are receiving our brothers and sisters from East Africa and out of Africa as well, to discuss issues of gender-based violence. Gloria, it is a privilege and an opportunity to be co-hosting this program with you today, where I hope we will share, learn, and also move this great agenda of gender-based violence, that fight against it within the African continent. Today, the discussion topic is engaging the African Union February 2025 Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. Can you hear us now? This is a forthcoming convention that as actors and activists within the conversation, we cannot stay blind to it. We need to talk about it as a continent, as advocates, researchers, and academia to make sure that this conversation gets the appropriate attention that it deserves. Now, the discussion topic is to put into perspective the United Nations forthcoming conference on Beijing, China in September 1995. Remember, we are 30 years. It is forthcoming. Beijing 30 is the next discussion on the lips of any gender-based, any gender equality activists. We are looking forward towards Beijing 30. Beijing 30 is stock taking, and this is already the beginning stone as activists and actors to be able to start taking stock. What have we done so far and what is left? The Beijing Declaration, as it is commonly referred to, some people call it the Beijing Platform for Actions, that has 12 critical areas with different people focusing on different issues, has always been like a core to women's conversation when they talk about the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination and violence against women. So the strategic objective was to take integrated measures to prevent and eliminate violence against women. This is looking at every stakeholder to be able to engage in this, to be able to take action against it. The second objective was study the causes and consequences of violence against women and the effectiveness of preventive measures, which I think most people on this panel are providing those preventive measures coming in from their different activities and interventions in their different communities. Then eliminate trafficking in women and assist victims of violence due to prostitution and trafficking. These have seen the rise of trafficking in persons advocacy all over the continent, with most countries adapting, like Cameroon, laws and stringent measures to be able to address these issues. And these issues on sexual violence, child labor is interwoven in this women's trafficking, which has become something very interesting, and most countries are passing laws and more global networks are being put together daily to address that. Gloria, I think we can talk more about this. I pass it over to you.
Yes, sure. So as this implementation of the Beijing Declaration approaches its 30th anniversary in 2025 on the Platform for Action, and following the 2023 Sustainable Development Goals, SDG Summit's call for accelerated progress towards achieving the 2030 Agenda, a review of the Platform of Action shows that violence against women and girls remains alarmingly prevalent across private and public spaces and across all forms of violence against women and girls, including its most extreme manifestation through the gender-related killings of women and girls, otherwise called femicide. This extreme manifestation of gender-related killings of women and girls is evident in the recent anti-femicide and GBV protests in Nairobi, Kenya, and buttressed by a Kenyan security report published by the Voice of Africa on December 24th, 2024, which revealed that 2024 has been dominated by violence and killings of women and girls, with more than 7,100 cases of gender-based violence since September 2023. Included in that number are more than 100 documented cases of murders against women since August 2024. The protests in Nairobi, Kenya form part of this year's 16 days annual International Civil Society Activism and campaign launched by activists at the inaugural Women's Global Leadership Institute in 1991, and has since mobilized individuals and organizations, including the United Nations and partners worldwide, to advocate for the prevention and elimination of violence against women and girls. Dr. Sally, please.
Okay, on the RDC, through sustained processes and strategies adopted to influence ideas, decisions, or policies. Violence against women and girls form an important and critical aspect of the African Union Agenda 2060. Oh, somebody's on. Could you mute for me? Agenda 2063 goals and priority, which calls for the establishment of a comprehensive, legally binding framework for the prevention and elimination of an effective response to all the forms of violence against women and girls across Africa by addressing the root causes and drivers of such violence, strengthening legal and institutional mechanisms, and promoting a culture of respect for human rights, gender equality, and the dignity of women and girls. So today, our discussion will be centered on country case studies and activism advocacy campaign by examining some of the sustained processes and strategies adopted by practitioners on gender-based violence across selected East African countries. Remember, we promised we'll be talking about East Africa this week, and here we are keeping to our promise. So to our listeners and viewers on the various social media platforms around the world, the Sankofa African Affairs webinar is anchored on myriad of perspectives. So there are maybe different opinions from our guests and experience. The differences in opinion does not necessarily mean perspectives and thoughts shared are wrong, but reflect a divergence of ideas to address security challenges facing the African continent. Dr. Gloria?
So thank you, Sally. The Sankofa African Affairs webinars relies on narratives for its discussion programs, and these narratives are an integral part of the African societies. And in our discussions, we utilize them based on research findings, policy positions, and realities prevailing in various African countries. The narratives help our panelists to present their perspectives independently, which sometimes may diverge from official government or organizational policy positions and doctrines. These narratives are sent to the panelists in advance to guide them in preparing their submissions. Today, we are joined by experts, activists from civil society organizations, the security sector, and international non-governmental organizations to help us delve into this topic. We are fortunate to have a well-balanced panelist for today's discussion, because the other time the concern was there are only females, but today we are balanced at least. So on our panel today, we have Ms. Hallelujah Muhoro, a gender and SPHR specialist from Kigali, Rwanda. We also have Kirabo Marion, a team lead at Next Gen Women Initiative, Kampala, Uganda. We have Rachel Mwikali Mweni, a gender justice SRHR, an African feminist, WHRD, human rights defender, national convener, CGHRDS, Nairobi, Kenya. Rachel, the task will be on you to tell us a bit more about these organizations. We have also Colonel Alex Khan, Chief of Planning at MIS, an enthusiast for gender-based violence. He's based in Mogadishu, Somalia. Colonel Khan is a Ghanaian senior military officer who is currently serving with the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia as the Chief Military Planning Officer at the force headquarters. He is a security consultant and is a gender-based violence enthusiast, as I stated earlier, and the founder of the African Security and Leadership Education Foundation. We also have Ms. Wem Shogi, a gender rights advocate in Khartoum, Sudan. And finally, on our panel, we have Pusparaj Mohanty. He is a former UNFPA gender and management specialist in Somalia. He is currently in India, and he has more than 20 years of international experience working on gender and development agenda across Africa and Asia with the UN and various international NGOs, including Save the Children, Care International, and Concern Worldwide. His last assignment was with UNFPA in Somalia as a gender and coordination specialist. Mr. Mohanty also holds a dual master's degree in women's studies and rural development. He has more than 6 years of experience working in Somalia with the UN Women and the UNFPA. So we will welcome the opening remarks from our panelists, which will then be placed within the context of these years 2024 16 days activism against femicide and activism against eliminating violence against women and girls under the theme Time to Act Now. So we will start briefly with Miss Hallelujah. You just have 1 minute to introduce yourself and tell us something about today's thematic aspect. Just a minute.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Thank you very much. My name's Hallelujah Mahoro. Mahoro is a Kinyarwanda name that means peace in English. I am from Rwanda, and I'm a young woman activist here, based here in Rwanda. My work and experience have been mostly around women's empowerment and girls' empowerment here with different civil society organizations, but mainly the women's-led organizations. I have been really working towards collectively bringing them together to form networks for advocacy, especially because the young organizations are not we're not really organized. So that has been my area of interest, and it's something that I have been working on. I hold a master's degree in gender and sexual reproductive health that I got recently in August from University of Global Health Equity. And this is a really a topic of my interest, but also a topic that in my country that is really a topic of interest, and as well as a focus area, either in the government strategies and many other, even with the partners and civil society organizations. So it is something that for us here within the 16 days of activism, we worked around a topic of having families that are free from GBV. Because in our country, it is well placed into the family umbrella, I would say. So a lot of activism in the 16 days of activism has been around that national theme, that I think is really important to ensure that everyone is having the conversation, and it's not just a conversation had by women simply because they are the most affected, but a conversation to be had by everyone. So I'm really privileged to be part of this conversation. I think my minute is almost over, or probably over.
It is actually
So
over.
we'll here, and I'll probably be responding to different questions. And I'm really glad to be here with everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Mahoro. Next, we move to Ms. Kirabo Marion. Just a minute to introduce yourself and link us to how the theme is important for you today. Ms. Kirabo Marion, if you are logged on. Okay, if we can't get a hold of, how do we have her now? No. Okay, so we'll move to Ms. Rachel Mweni. Please tell us something about the 16 days and
Thank you.
Yes, in a minute.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. Like you did my introduction, I don't want to spend more time on that. Being also the convener of Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defender, which is a social movement of grassroots activists, feminists, and community organizers organizing in grassroots community. And also one of your key mandates is around preventing GBV and responding as first responders, which we are as Women Human Rights Defender, and also as a survivor of also GBV. And unfortunately, when we were doing the Femicide march in Nairobi, 10th of December, 2022, unfortunately, now I also get into the statistic of also like surviving because I was strangled by the police during the protest. I was harassed sexually, and I was also beaten, and also other members of End Femicide Kenya movement, which I'm also part of the End Femicide movement. It's unfortunate that during 16 days of activism, when we just organized that we go on the street because our government has failed to protect us as women, we ended up falling into the hands of police who were supposed to protect us, who ended up being perpetrators of GBV. So my sister, Prof, when you talk about GBV, you can imagine the kind of also mental torture that it has led to most of us who are organizing in ending femicide, not only just in Kenya, but across the continent and other countries, and seeing policymakers violating us. It means it's a gap. So when you talk about one, even the leverage around the gaps on African Union and why this topic is important to me is that currently, globally, and in Kenya and in the continent, we have a crisis of femicide. And we need to acknowledge that femicide is linked to gender-based violence against women and girls, and also gender non-conforming people. And we can't avoid not talking about it and not also having African Union accountable to its states members taking action, because within the movement and outside the movement, it's becoming a big thing of normalization of women as women being killed, and states not taking accountability and not being serious. So even being in this call, it's important for us on how to strengthen our global solidarity and people to people solidarity to be able to hold our government accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel. And we'll be very eager to listen to you more. We move to the next lady, and that's Ms. Wem Shogi in Khartoum. Please talk to us in a minute.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shogi from Sudan. Obviously, I'm not living in Sudan because the war. I'm out of Sudan. I work with the grassroots movement, feminism movement, and how we can face, we call it the emergency room, how we can face the situation during the war, how we can help people to survive. Also, I work with documentation, the oral stories from women, to written stories, to talk about this story. Also, I work as a researcher in documentary movies. We document the organizing group, how they work during this situation, because it was a revolution, a military coup, and now it's war. Um, about the GBV, I know it's not something just in Kenya or just in Sudan or just in Rwanda or in Congo or in Mali. But the thing I'm start thinking about, especially after the war, I live in Kenya. And when I saw the situation happen, and I ask myself, no, this is also my case. But when you see in another way, but I'm just a refugee now, how I can deal with that. But I'm an activist. She's my sister now. How I can deal with that, how I can be involved with that. But I'm so thankful for a Kenya movement because you just feel like you know you are fit in here and you can do something, you've been heard and you can exchange experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before we move to our gentlemen, I'm not sure Marion is here. Kirabo Marion, if you're here, please speak to us. Okay, so if Marion is not in, we have our two gentlemen who are our PACE setters for the day because we want to link GBV with human security. And as I was introducing them, I gave you quite a heavy background on their areas and their expertise. So I will hand over to Dr. Sally to guide us through the next step. We're listening to Colonel Khan, and he can introduce himself as they proceed with the discussion. Welcome, Sally. Sally?
I need help manipulating the buttons to unlock myself. Okay, thank you, Gloria. Am I there? I feel I'm not in the room. Okay. Yeah. Are you able to hear me, please?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, Sally, okay. I can hear you.
All
yes.
Right. Thank you, Gloria. We move straight to this conversation. Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to invite Kone Khan, and I'm to introduce yourself, what you did for the team, and then you get engaged in the conversation. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Human rights.
There seems to be...
Can I go on?
Yes, please. Please go on.
Good. Thank you very much. So, as has been said already, I'm Colonel Khan.
Yeah,
I am a military...
Please introduce yourself and speak to the team.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. So my name is Colonel Khan. I am a Ghanaian military officer currently serving in Somalia with African Union. My job has taken me to places like DRC, Sudan, Mali, and South Sudan, and currently I'm working in Somalia. Because of my research area, which is armed conflict, I have become interested in the issue of GBV because anywhere there's armed conflict, as we all know, there's a high prevalence of GBV. So I'm very happy to be here, and I hope to learn from everyone and all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Khan. We are going to bring in the next gentleman. Please introduce yourself, Mwanti, and speak to the theme of this year.
Good morning and good evening, as it's a bit late in India now. It's almost going to be 8 p.m. So you have already introduced me well, but I would like to just emphasize that for the last 20 years, I have been working in Kenya, Somalia, South Sudan, North Sudan, Burundi, Sierra Leone, and Liberia in Africa, and in Yemen, Afghanistan, and India in Asia. And my area, apart from various other things, lies in gender and development and working on equality, gender equality, and also working on advocacy on that. And I also have demonstrated expertise in grassroots movement building across all these nations. And definitely we'll be talking and deliberating more as we go. Thank you, and over to you. And I also commend the organizers for really organizing such kind of events, which is good, and also the hosts and my fellow panelists and the participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. With the introduction done, we will want to dive straight into the business of the day, trying to gain as much time as we can. So we are going to use this modality to be able to go. We are going to do a submission on the narrative, and we call on participants to be able to maybe drop a question in the chat, whatever you want to ask them in the chat. And when we have the conversation, the submission is made. We are going to see how we interact with the content and also get the other activists on board. We are very grateful that we have a rich panel, and we look forward to managing time in such a way that we get a rich conversation, that everybody leaves with something very beneficial. Okay. A United Nations rights article by the Office of High Commissioner, South African Regional Office, report on gender-based violence states that GBV is a human rights violation that is deeply rooted in existing harmful social norms and promote gender inequality and discrimination. Following decades of advocacy by women's rights organizations, remember we took our bearing from 1995, which is 30 years in a few days, GBV is now globally considered as a violation of human rights and an affront to their dignity and safety and well-being, instead of merely an inborn vulnerability or a private matter in which states should not interfere. This advocacy also contributed to the adoption of Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, General Recommendation 194 on Violence Against Women. As demonstrated by political statements and commitments, there is a heightened understanding that GBV has long-lasting and often intergenerational consequences on the physical and mental health of women and girls, as well as wider societal costs, which can carry across intergenerationally. Efforts to address GBV must be framed within a human rights-based and gender transformative approach. It is essential that those most affected by GBV, specifically women and girls, face multiple forms of discrimination, and their diverse experiences are informing the design of initiatives, decisions as it relates to addressing GBV. Coming back home to the continent, we will say the African Union's Agenda 2063 recognizes that GBV acts as a barrier to human security, peace, and development. At the same time, there is an increasing call for urgent action to accelerate investment in women to end gender-based violence. So with this background, we agree that the African continent is very concerned about gender-based violence, its impact on human security, and we will try in this conversation to be able to establish what we mean by human security and how it is related to gender-based violence. With this understanding, we are going to invite the first panelist, Colonel Khan, to speak to us. Colonel Khan, as an expert, a security expert with several years of UN peacekeeping mission experiences across several African countries, especially in post-conflict African states, as a why GBV acts as a barrier to human security, peace, and development. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you so much. So, as we all know, when there's conflict, any form of conflict, the way we live normally is impacted heavily. And once that happens, it opens the window or the doors for so many things or so many acts of GBV to happen. But I think we have to look at it from the human security perspective. And according to the United Nations Development Program, human security is the comprehensive approach to understanding and addressing threats to the well-being, survival of individuals. And they put emphasis on the protection of people rather than states. So when we're talking about human security, the focus is on people than a state or the country. And human security is looked at, it looks at security from so many perspectives, from economic perspective, food security, health, environmental security, personal security, community security, and then political security. When security is looked at from this perspective, it shifts from the traditional security where you want to see the police, the military, or the other state security agencies. We move the definition of security from there and focus on freedom from fear. And as you all know, GBV in so many ways puts so much fear on the people affected. Freedom from want. Anytime there's want is highlighted or escalated, it creates human security issues. And then finally, the ability to live in dignity. I mean, dignity is such that both the rich and the poor seek dignity. So if you look at this definition of GBV from the United Nations Development Program, it makes the issue of GBV very important, such that we cannot speak it, we cannot sweep it under the carpet, whether there's armed conflict or there is no armed conflict. And I know most of us know how GBV manifests. I'm just going to go through a few of them, and by the time I'm done, you appreciate how serious it affects what the UNDP call as human security. GBV is seen in so many forms. We can talk about the issue of sexual violence, the issue of kidnapping, rape. I mean, all those things that we already know. The impact on social cohesion and all that. So if you look at all these things, it comes really confirm the fact that if we want to achieve human security at a very high level, then the issue of GBV must be looked at and looked at critically, whether we are in conflict situation or not. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kaneka. Your definition of human security got me smiling because you tried to differentiate between state security and human security, and you stated clearly that human security has to do with issues of economic, that's access to resources and opportunity for all. You spoke about health. People should be able to have health, food, the environment is good, the community is good, and thank you. Most of the activists who are here and participants are people who intervene at this level. However, I want to bring you back. In your opinion, when you cite gender-based violence, which we have agreed on this platform, that it is any violations, and gender-based violence has been classified as a human rights issue. Now, in your experience, following your expertise, and you've worked in institutions that have provided high level of response, especially during conflict and post-conflict in rebuilding communities on gender-based violence, what will you say is the relationship with GBV, the root causes of GBV, how they speak to the political instabilities that we notice within the African continent, or the instances of conflict generally, because we have conflicts at the latent stages at grassroots level that I think most activists will speak to. How do you connect this as like GBV being a key promoter of such issues that finally lead to full-blown wars or acts of violence that cost life and take away human dignity?
All right, thank you very much. So let's look at it this way. I said that GBV causes conflict, and conflict results in GBV. So let's look at a society where everything is working well, there's peace and security. However, as we know in Africa, in most communities, there's either some group of people, whether it is a tribe or whatever it is, are in majority. So they control all the resources and everything. And wherever there's majority, there's a minority group. So then the issue of GBV starts bit by bit. And over time, it's seen that it's most of the time perpetuated by those in the majority because they are rich. So they have, even when the issue comes up, needs to be investigated, needs to be punished, it is glossed over, impunity continues. And then at some point, the minority say, hey, we cannot contain this anymore. Then instead of resorting to the traditional processes of grievance procedures, they resort to the violent way. This can start a whole conflict and it can spread to the whole part of the community and the country. This is where GBV has caused conflict. Now, when you reverse the situation, this same community, everything was fine. And then now the conflict started. People have to leave their everyday way of life. They find themselves in a protected environment. It could be refugee camp, displaced camp, or whatever it is. Then, because in these camps, there's always structure of people being given responsibility. People want to use this authority they have now to also perpetuate the same things. The issue of rape starts coming in, sexual harassment starts coming in, and all the other bad things we can think about as far as GBV is concerned. So you see that everything was fine, conflict started, people were displaced. Now GBV started coming up. So with these two scenarios, if we really want to attain human security, we cannot brush aside the issue of GBV because it's either displacing or causing social instability or destabilization, or it will result in the same security concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel. That sounds very interesting. And from your submission, I will say that we are understanding here that human security takes its bearing from gender-based violence, which we had established on this platform, that gender-based violence is embedded in our socialization processes, where we grow to see inequality as the normal, because we are born into, we are discussing within the African continent. And I know most of us, irrespective, I see people from Central Africa from here, those from East Africa, South Africa. One thing is evident, with patriarchy that we have, or strong feminist view, there's always this issue of inequality, this power imbalance in the dynamics, how we operate power, which people internalize from the family level. And when they get into the community, when it now comes to issue that guarantees human security, like food, like health, like the use of the environment, most of us are coming from agro-pastoral backgrounds, where the farmlands are where we want to get our resources from. Inequalities that we internalize within the family guides the way we look at resources out of the family, guides the way we lead in the community as leaders, and there is no guarantee within human security. Now, I just want to confirm with the Colonel that is this link well established in a way that he feels satisfied that human security can only be guaranteed if people are conscious of the existing biases that gender-based violence puts in us in our socialization processes, which we now take into leadership when we decide the fate of a people. Am I right, Colonel?
Yes, you're right. Inequality is everywhere, whether it is in the developed world or the developing or the underdeveloped. It's everywhere. However, that is why there is government. So when we have a government that recognizes the essence of human security, government that has a mandate to make sure that the issue of, like you mentioned, the people have access to food, health, environment, personal security, community security. When governments come out with policies from the sources of all these things, deliberately trying to make sure that things are done to make sure that though this inequality exists, because there's equality to access to resources, with time, people will work things out and there will be a balance at some point. So I think that when we have a government that is working would from all the issue we are mentioning, the issue of human security, health security, and all that, when a government committed comes out with policies from all these things, the inequality cannot be eliminated. But then I think at some point there will be that balance that will reduce what people use this inequality wrongly to achieve their personal or individual objectives, so that the issue of GBV is perpetuated. Because then this same government responsibility, when it is well done, the issue of awareness will be high. People will be punished when they have to be punished. So much will go into research. I mean, all the good things we know about GBV. A responsible government can work to ensure that these things, to a large extent, are reduced so that the issue of GBV doesn't come up as it is going on in some countries in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel, for those very, very interesting and insightful submissions. So we will move to Mohanty, and his narrative is basically on the 16 days of activism, calling for unity to end violence against women by 2030. Remember, we are already in 2024. Is this achievable? The 16 days of activism against GBV is an annual and international civil society-led campaign, and it commences on the 25th of November, goes all the way to the 10th of December. Then there's the Human Rights Day that highlights the violence against women as the most pervasive breach of human rights worldwide. So this campaign was launched by activists at the inaugural Women's Global Leadership Institute in 1991. And since then, it has mobilized individuals and organizations, including the UN, where Mohanty was, and partners worldwide, to advocate for the prevention and elimination of violence against women and girls. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the UN General Assembly's designation of November 25th as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And this is in memory of the Mirabal sisters who were brutally assassinated on this day in 1960. In 2024, women and girls continue to be murdered because of their gender. So women in the public eye, including those in politics, women in athletics, human rights defenders, journalists, they're often the targets of these international acts of violence, both online and offline, with some leading to fatal outcomes and intentional killings. So now we're joined here by Mohanty, who has several massive experience in this topic, in this manner. Could we just listen to you, Mohanty, give your submissions on this narrative?
Yeah, thank you. I would like to just highlight the context of Somalia. I will talk in the context of Somalia, and also a little bit beyond the 16 days of activism, because I personally feel that the 16 days of activism has really remained as just an event. We have not graduated beyond an event, because there is no connectivity after 16 days of activism. What I personally have felt, that we have done a lot of activities within those 16 days, which later on does not translate into something solid in my personal experience. So if I talk about Somalia, the gender-based violence is very rampant, and the situation, I would like to say, is grim. And this is because if you see Somalia, the culture itself, a patriarchal culture, and the culture itself that promotes male chauvinism, that promotes male preference over female. That is something which is there. And second, what I have seen, very poor rule of law, or lack of justice system, and very big culture of impunity is there, and also a lack of proper policy frameworks to deal with gender-based violence. Lack of resources or scarcity of resources also leads to non-prioritization of GBV as an issue. And the political instability, to say the least, in Somalia, where I would say Somalia is many countries within one country. The country is divided into many areas within country. There is one area which is completely controlled by the non-state actors like Al-Shabaab. There are self-declared independent states within Somalia called Somaliland. There is autonomous region called Puntland. So there is another state called Southwest State. So within one country, there are many states. So one law doesn't hold good in another area. So there is no proper binding one nation, one law kind of scenario in the country. And as I said, non-inclusiveness, like we are exclusive. When we are talking about GBV, that talk and that narrative remains within the development sector. What I feel that the NGOs, the UN, maybe some portion of the government talk about it. There is no proper involvement of the business sector, of the non-development sector, of the civil society organizations, of the community itself. So the community mobilization is also lacking in Somalia, and involvement of strong civil society or creation of strong civil society is something that is also pushing the GBV agenda behind. I would like to give one example of the policy framework. When we talk about the policy framework, that is UNSCR 1325. When we are talking about UNSCR 1325, it has, after long pushing, after a lot of lobbying, Somalia developed a national action plan in 2022. After 2022, it has not yet been implemented till now. It is from 2022-2026 for 4 years, the national action plan, but it has not yet been implemented. It has not commenced the implementation of it. Somalia has not acceded to CEDAW. They have signed the Maputo Protocol, but they have not yet ratified the Maputo Protocol. So if you see, there is a lot of resistance and a lot of vacuum in the policy framework level. And then, as I said, the culture of impunity is very strong. Data is very sensitive. Talking about GBV is very, very sensitive within the community. When we first started, I remember talking about gender-based violence, opening up one-stop centers for gender-based violence survivors, talking about women and girls safe spaces within the community. It is impossible. It was not acceptable within the community. But slowly over the period, with a lot of advocacy, lot of talking, it started now. Now it has opened up a little bit. But still the government is denying, is not willing to accept there is a lot of GBV within the country. There is they don't want to listen even about GBV. So GBV is not high on their agenda as well, because of lack of political will, because of lack of resources, because lack of prioritization. So there are many issues that is coupled together here in Somalia. So that's another issue. And as I said, security, the non-state actors are controlling many parts of the country, and they even do not have access into those parts, and those are very fundamentalist groups, and for them GVV is not in their radar to talk about. So Somalia is different ballgame altogether. But as I say, the 16 days of activism is a starting point for us. We start very well with good notes. We do within UN, we do within the government, we do sometimes within the NGO world, but it doesn't percolate beyond that. I do not think in big ways we involve the business people, the diaspora, because Somali economy is very much dependent on the diaspora. The diaspora has a big say in the politics, in the society, everywhere. So we also don't involve so much them. And also the community. The community, when we talk about the community, I personally feel it is a vertical development rather than horizontal development. The same women group, the same women keep on rolling event after event, year after year. So it doesn't percolate down to the community per se. The civil society organizations, the media, no, it doesn't percolate down to them. It's just an event for 16 days. We plan for 16 days. Beyond that, we don't do anything. Even sometimes we do some resolutions, but after the resolution, it goes back to wherever we are. It doesn't go beyond that. So I personally feel that need to be a connection between the 16 days activism, what we do, and how do we translate it into something solid that can show that there's a lot of progress taking place as far as sustainable development goals are concerned, as far as any other goals that we have set aside. Beijing Plus platform, for I remember when we are talking about Beijing Plus 25 last time when I was there. So we are talking about the progresses on the 12 standards, but no progress has been made because there is no data to measure. There is no available venues that where you can go and collect data. Even there is no secondary data sometimes available. So it's very sensitive also to talk about GBV openly in the society. The society is very, very closed. The lack of rule of law, where a survivor can rely on. The survivor goes on to the traditional law. So people in general also look into the traditional law, the HERE system in Somalia. The HERE system is there. So they rely on that one. So where do you talk about justice? So the justice system is weak. People cannot go, and there is a fear of retaliation. There is a culture of impunity. So all these things are there, but at the end of the tunnel, the light is there, as I said, and we have been working a lot. As I said, the National Action Plan has already been there. It has been already developed, but it needs some traction to be put into action. There is a lot of also lobbying and advocacy has been done for SEDO. The government has given their consent. They are working on it. And also the fragility of the government, we also need to take into account, and the security situation. So coupled together, all these makes it a very, very volatile situation in Somalia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohanty. It's good that you actually came so that we get to understand this different ballgame in Somalia. And you've actually pointed out that beyond the 16 days, the translation of what happens in the 16 days is actually not visible. But then again, a light at the end of the tunnel, because you've said it's the beginning of something. You mentioned lack of political will. Among these issues that make GBV kind of at the bottom of the ladder when it comes to issues that Somalia would want to address. Could it be that maybe there are other more pertinent issues they're addressing, like issues like terrorism, unnecessary killings, aside from GBV, that could keep them from addressing GBV in a patriarchal setup?
Definitely, but as I said, the beginning has started. Recently, we have been talking a lot that gender-based violence cannot wait. It is also a life-saving issue. It cannot wait, because when we go to the table, negotiation table, immediately we talk about life saving, food, health, education, or not even education, food, health, that things come immediately. And we talk that no, GBV cannot wait. GBV has to be addressed as well. Obviously, there is terrorism, there is all these issues, but how does it contribute to the overall fabric of the society, to the overall peace and security situation in the society? As my predecessor was saying, GBV is an outcome of conflict, and also GBV leads to conflict. So in one way or the other, we are trying to show to the donors, to the advocacy group, that gender-based violence is an early warning system for conflict. If there is a spike in gender-based violence, there is definitely going to be a conflict, either way or the other. So it's a starting point. So we need to address gender-based violence as an early warning system to address human security and to address a peace and security situation within the country. And I also see in the chat, someone was asking who is making a division, what is happening. I would also like to say there is a lot of political interference, that's for sure. That is, if you see the political scenario in the country, there is a lot of interference from the neighboring countries. There is a lot of interference from Turkey, from Egypt. If you see all these countries, and also Western world like USA, UK, Sweden, all of them has a lot of strategic and geopolitical interest in Somalia. That makes it a playground for them to play around. And that also contributes to the instability within the country, because the country people are not allowed to manage themselves as well. There is a lot of interferences. At the same time, I would like to say also there is a lot of interference from the diaspora. If you see, most of the ministers, most of the people who are managing our diaspora, the local people are where they are. Their capacity is still low, and that need to be also invested a lot and need to be developed. And if you see the history of Somalia, if you see, there is a lot of Somali people in Kenya. There is a lot of Somali people in Ethiopia. There is also Somali people in Eritrea, Djibouti. So if you see the flag of Somalia, they have 5 pointers, and those 5 pointers point to all these regions within the area. So they have been strategically, and I would say that knowingly divided amongst them from the very beginning, from the colonial era, so that they keep on getting this kind of negative interference, political interference. So that also has contributed to a lot in spikes in GBV. So we have a GBV IMS system. For example, UN runs a gender-based violence information management system. In the management system, it's very difficult to portray the real picture. There is a high degree of intimate partner violence, violence related to conflicts against women, and rapes, and all these things are happening within the country. But it's very difficult to portray because the government is in a denial mood, is in going back, the culturally not acceptable. If you see, FGM is also very high in the country. There is no legislative framework within the country against FGM. The first state, there is one state, after a lot of advocacy, they just did recently anti-FGM law in Jubaland, somewhere called in Jubaland. They recently came out with a law last year, early this year when I was there. So there is no law as such framework also to protect women against gender-based violence. And as I said, impunity is there, fear of retaliation is there, and lack of resources. All these combined together makes it a very different situation within the country.
Thank you very much. Just one last one before I let you go. You have given us highlights and responded to the question in the chat, which I was about to ask you. Thank you for that. Just looking a bit from the man's perspective, do you think that the men suffer some kind of trauma and it then manifests in how they treat women from your experience there?
Yeah, definitely. I cannot deny that it's there. But as I said, if you compare, that side is much less than the other, but it is there. It cannot be denied. But as I said, recently also we have started a community mobilization strategy called SASA Together. as a UN and UNFPA, we have been relying on a community mobilization technique called SASA together, where we are talking about men and boys, religious leaders, and traditional elders, apart from the women and girls who are affected directly, to ensure that the GBV is talked about within the community, because it's a taboo within the Somali community to talk about it. And so that men can start talking about it, so that the religious preachers can start talking about it, so that the traditional elders and recognize it as an issue within the community, and they can rely on the formal justice system. But unfortunately, the formal justice system is not there, is not yet ripe, is not yet ready to really absorb. It's only one state, where Puntland, where they have anti-rape law. Across all other places in Somalia, there is no anti-rape law. So they all rely and depend on the traditional judicial system, where if the girl is raped, the father father of the boy gives out some camel to the father of the female. That's it. It's settled. So nothing beyond that. So there are so many other things are there. So we have to work. As I said, community mobilization has to be there. Involvement of all the sectors, the private sector, the civil society organization has to be there. So all this has to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohanty. Do you think you have time for one more question from Sally?
Sure.
Okay, Sally, go ahead. Sally?
Okay, Nancy, thank you very much. I will not be satisfied on that. Are you able to get me?
I'm not being able to hear you, Sally. I think somebody else is also talking.
Talking from behind. Are you able to get me? Please. Okay. Are you able to get me now, Mohanty?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I lost you.
Now, I will not be on advocacy. Now,
Yes.
you said it clearly that the conversation, when you look at 16 days activism and other issue, is not holistic. I am very happy the way you flagged out government will to pushing issues of GBV. And it also brought to my mind the contribution of international organizations and UN systems that come to assist different communities during conflict and even after conflict, what their perspective of gender-based violence is when it comes to funding and the way they role their different protocols, because they will say there is the UNFPA protocol for gender-based violence, which sometimes we wonder how best it has been contextualized to fit Somalia, for example. So my question to you would be, please, could you, as a seasoned expert on advocacy, advise CSOs on how best they can build their advocacy actions and strategies to engage governments in a way that they are willing to put the funds, engage international communities to be able to fund them in a way that fits their specific needs, that is localization of their actions. What advice do you have for us?
I think one of the things that I'll give also this kind of example that we have been doing in Somalia, because if you see, as I said, there has been a narrative that gender-based violence is not life-saving. So Somalia, if you see, majority of the funding goes as humanitarian funding. So the humanitarian funding much more is directed towards something called life-saving. So the life-saving, immediately they come into 3 or 4 categories, which is health, food security, shelter, and camp management. These 3-4 areas get the majority of the chunk. But in the recent times, we have been doing a lot of advocacy, individually talking to the donors, individually talking to the international community, and showing them that a traumatized woman is ultimately going to die, or a survivor of gender-based violence is going to die within the community, because there is no support system within the community. So if there is no support system within the community and the government, someone who is a survivor is not going to survive for sure. So, and then regularly coming up with data, solid data, which is evidence-based advocacy that we are doing. We are coming out with monthly and a kind of fortnightly, then a kind of quarterly journals and advocacy tools to educate and make the donors and the international community aware that this is what is happening and gender-based violence cannot wait. And then, as I said, we have also started bringing in a lot of civil society organizations, for example, media, sensitizing them to report on the issues of gender-based violence, sensitizing them to give priority to reporting GBV cases, making it a front page headline rather than going as a small one within somewhere hidden. So to make it, and very boldly saying that, okay, obviously we have to we don't have to disclose the identity and all those protocols we need to take into consideration, but definitely giving a lot of priority to these kind of issues so that media can come out and they can do a lot of lobbying and advocacy, bringing in a lot of academia diaspora also to talk about it. And as I said, we have also recently started partnering with a lot of business houses. For example, in Somalia, there's a business house, the Hafsil Bank. We have started talking to them. There is also big telecom companies in Somalia, Hormuz. So we have started talking to them so that they can also support this kind of initiative. There is Somali Chamber of Business. So we have also talked to them so that they are aware of what is gender-based violence and what actions they can take to curtail gender-based violence within the market, where the Somali market is mostly dominated by. So, but that area is also it's a place for gender-based violence as well. So how to minimize gender-based violence in those workplaces? Like, for example, for women, there could be separate toilets or separate spelling places, or how do they monitor? So all these things we need to do so that we can minimize this gender-based violence in all those places.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohanty, for being with us. We will excuse you because of your other engagements, but we are very grateful for your comments, which are very handy and very realistic and based on the actual thing on the ground in Somalia. Thank you once again. Now we will move to Marion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Marion, in a minute, just an introduction of yourself and why this theme of today is important to you in just 1 minute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry for joining you late. I had a bit of network issues. I will still be on and off because I'm not sure about my network here. I had traveled up country for Christmas. So my name is Marion Chirabo. I am the team lead at Next Gen Women Initiative, an organization based in Uganda that aims at improving women's participation in politics. Part of the things that we look at as hindrances to women's participation is GBV, and how the patriarchy uses violence to kind of limit women's participation in politics. I mostly work with young women, especially young women in universities and those who want to engage in university politics. Mostly part of our work includes mentorship, but also campaigns around sexual harassment, as that is an example of GBV that mostly affects young women in politics. Yeah, basically that is it.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll hand over to Sally so that she can proceed with Mwikali. Sally, you're muted.
Oh, I always suffer to unmute. I don't know why. Okay, the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women is a comprehensive legal framework, like we've been talking about, being framework for the prevention and elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls on the continent. The convention is currently in the drafting stage, allowing for consultation with various stakeholders and the African citizens. The development of the African Union on the
Ali, we keep losing.
Yes, I can't hear. I don't know if she's breaking.
Women and girls is informed by the historic decision in February 2023 during the African Union. Hello?
Yes, you're back now.
Can you hear me, please?
Now we can.
Okay.
We lost you a little bit.
All right. So, in February 2024, the heads of state and government reiterated their commitment to support and conclude the negotiation and submit a draft convention for adoption in February 2025. The convention thus aims to establish a comprehensive, legally binding framework for the prevention and elimination of an effective response to all forms of violence against women and girls across Africa by addressing the root causes and drivers of such violence, strengthening legal and institutional mechanisms, and promoting a culture of respect for human rights, gender equality, and the dignity of women and girls. Ensure that state parties reinforce the commonality of approach to eliminating violence against women and girls while acting as a stimulus for an open narrative and advocacy on violence against women and girls. So, citizens and stakeholders' engagement on preventing and ending violence against women and girls has been a continuous process. The African Union has convened stakeholder consultation with groups such as women's rights organizations, traditional leaders, the private sector, academia, youth, and those who contributions inform the process too, and supporting the development of the convention. A citizen engagement platform has been established to gather input from Africans, both on the continent and in the diaspora, ensuring that the convention reflects the perspectives and needs of its beneficiaries. An inclusive approach has been adopted in the consultation process to ensure stakeholders contribute to the development of the convention, including campaigns, traditional and digital engagement, leveraging digital media, traditional media, as well as engagements at the community, national, regional, and continental levels. That's where we are with the African Union's convention, which will be launched in February. So speaking to Rachel, please, could you share with us your work in activism, what you have done within your community to make sure that consultations like this carries a powerful voice from the communities that you serve, represent, and engaged?
Thank you so much. And sorry, I'll have to drop at 6:45. One, from my own perspective as a human rights defender, and also being that I have background on also development, I would say one, we don't have short of the laws and policy that are supposed to protect us as women and girls in the continent. We have the Maputo Protocol. And I believe from our own perspective of also holding African Union responsible is that most of the countries should be able to domesticate Maputo Protocol, which protects a lot of us African women in our own diversity and girls. And some of the work that I've been able to be involved with our movement, Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders, is that reading some of these policies or participating effectively through different networks that we are part of is that we ensure that we localize this policy from our own level, at the same time holding our duty bearers accountable. And I can give an example. Before I went to Banjul this year at the African Commission, African Human and People's Rights Commission, was that these are spaces that have never been of grassroots. These are spaces that are very powerful, but the only people who will always have access to these spaces are governments and high-end NGOs and not human rights defenders. And this year I had that privilege through African Defenders and Defenders and Defenders Coalition to attend. And one of the things that made me go there also was the issues around femicide, where we have seen it rising in Kenya and our government are not doing anything. But also you find the gap has always been that most also perpetrators of GBV from a femicide perspective and also national level are also policy makers of our countries. We have seen policymakers, even like this year when we had one case of a young woman who was murdered and the husband was a county member of county assembly. This is also a politician. And you can see the duty bearers that are supposed to protect us are also the ones perpetrating this violence. Will they create laws, for example, that are protecting us? No. So my role as an activist, or our role as feminist activists, is to ensure that we push for policy implementation to ensure that they're able to protect us. We push for policy also that protect us as women human rights defender, which also I know there's a process also at the African Union that is going on of coming up with a policy that's supposed to protect us women human rights defenders, and also acknowledging and the work that we all do. At the African Commission this year, we were able to have this discussion that we need also our work as HRD to be recognized. So you find directly and primarily on my daily lived life, I have to respond on these cases at first hand. And when I have to respond on these cases at first hand, it means that it involves me also pushing my government with other activists, which also can see my comrade also here, Hallelujah, and also Lom from Sudan, is that this is our collective work, as much as academia also playing a big role of also giving us papers and also research. It's also our role to ensure that some of this research and papers are localized to be able to be used as a point of argument. The other point also that we usually do is around also changing the narrative, because reality is we are dealing with patriarchal system and structure and social norms that has always been used against us women and girls. So also the role also that we do also as CGHR is to ensure that we shift this narrative that always humanizes the perpetrator and humanizes us survivors or victims, as people will call it. But you find that the narrative role plays a critical work in ensuring that even if these consultations are going on thoroughly, it means also we have to be involved, because in our own diversity, in our own rights, we are the people who use this policy. This policy are not created for other people, it's us. But at the same time, you realize also with my engagement with the African Union, they're usually secluded spaces where gender issues are never prioritized. And especially now that globally we're having a crisis of the rising of anti-gender, anti-choice movements that are taking over, and then budgets being cut on gender. Currently in Kenya, we don't have even a minister for gender. You can imagine, and you're dealing with the largest cases of femicide. We don't have a minister for gender. Even last week during the reshuffle of cabinets, they're able to put in other cabinets, but still they're ignoring for us to have a CS, Cabinet Secretary for Gender, a State Department on Gender. So you find that what I would say, which also as a proud Black African woman, I feel disappointed that most of heads of our states don't take our issues seriously. We have seen in countries where there was the people suffer most are children, elderly, and people with disability. And we have seen during also war zones, people get raped, it's us. We have seen even during when violations happen in our community, people get shamed, it's us. So it means that clearly my work and the work we all do, it means like getting to different spaces, ensuring that our voices are heard, our voices are not ignored, reminding the duty bearers we vote them because we feel that they have a mandate to ensure our safety, security, and protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for the input you've given us and trying to explain to us your experience at the African Union, which is the regional house, and linking it back to Kenya, where we have issues with, you said there is no minister of gender. Some people say they have.
No, we don't, unfortunately.
Minister of gender, but there is no budget. There is no budget attached to that. So it's a signal, Gloria, that activists still need to talk about issues of gender to gain government will. So maybe you take the conversation further.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sally. I will move to Mahoro, and I love her name because she said it means peace. So, Mahoro, we've listened to Mwikali, and she's started us off quite well, and we've seen from the Kenyan experience, according to Mwikali, that SGBV fight is still way below where it's supposed to be. It's not being taken seriously, but she says clearly we're not giving up on it anytime soon. We have to push it forward. So now, Mahoro, we also listened to Mohanty and the Colonel, and clearly, beyond the 16 days, something needs to be done. So as you're giving us your experience as an activist in Rwanda, could you speak to this? What can be done beyond the 16 days in your country, in your setup, as an activist? What exactly are you doing? Please talk to us.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
It's heavily raining in Kigali, so I hope it doesn't bother you. Thank you so much. First, want to recognize other speakers and what they really spoke about and how important it is. For me, my reflection would be mainly about like the personal experience, but mostly that also reflects on everybody's experience because we grew up in a country that is just post-genocide. As a young woman, of course, there was a lot of healing happening, but also a lot of development also happening at once. So, in my opinion, I like to say that I don't really think that we really gave the attention to the abuse that women have encountered in that period of time. And it's one of the things that we usually reflect on, even during testimonials, even during the Memorial Week, that these stories keep coming on. Apparently, they can hear me well.
I can hear you, just there's a lot of noise in your background, but I can get what you're saying.
So sorry, due to it's really heavily raining here, so I'm so sorry about that. I hope I can be loud enough. So I was reflecting on the fact that the healing journey and I would say the attention that was really needed could not really be achieved in my opinion. But also it's really important for me to recognize uh, the efforts and the intentionality of our government and what it has done towards that in terms of really putting survivors at the front, ensuring that many different factors that the first speakers really spoke about, like economic empowerment, like access to food security, and other things that really determines if you are secure, are also touched on. So it's something that I really commend the government to really contribute at, but also reconciliation and bringing people together. These are efforts that have been done and that I think has been able to free a lot of survivors, but also break the taboos around that. Because honestly speaking, these are things that are embedded in the cultural norms, in the way the society is built, in the way that people believe that the society should live. And so these are things then that I see me as an activist that we keep working around, breaking the norms around that, breaking the, I would say, the victim blaming, which are still things that we talk about today, to ensure that at the end of the day, the comprehensive solutions are created for them. And one of the things that I also want to speak about is the political will, which I think is really important. I think someone from Somali reflected on the government signing the Maputo Protocol but not ratifying it, which means that they are not held accountable to things like that, which I find really important that for us, with the progress that we have made, that the ratification of these frameworks that have been done, but also developing the national legal frameworks that supports victims, that pays attention to the issue, that also breaks the norms in the community has been contributing a lot to fighting these issues. We are nowhere perfect and we're nowhere to achieving exactly what we want. But personally, I am recognizing what has been done so far. And I look at it as a hope that whatever I am dreaming as an activist is really possible here. Whatever I'm dreaming and however I want to voice out my issues, I know that there are opportunities for me, and there are opportunities for other women and other activists also for their voices to be heard. And so, speaking about the situations, and I would say I wouldn't say there is so much difference, because there's still a lot of intimate partner violence. There is really still killing, um, as much as other countries are also suffering from that. But as an activist and working with other civil society organizations as well as other feminists, these are still the issue of our concern, I would say, but also the focus of our work. That we keep doing the advocacy, we keep looking for support for the survivors, for the victims, ensuring that their families are taken care of, ensuring that they also get the justice that they need. So there is a lot of stakeholder engagement, and there is a lot of working together, I would say, that allows us to achieve whatever we want to achieve. And then probably reflecting on beyond 16 days of activism. I like to say with other people that these are not a celebration. This is not a period of celebration. This is not a special, I don't know, period of time that we just now remember that gender-based violence is there, but it should be a daily work, and it should be a daily assignment to really put in the work that we need to do. So, among the strategies that I would personally suggest is the need for advocacy, continuing to do the advocacy, but working together, because at the end of the day, we're all working for the same goal. I don't think anyone wants to achieve anything other than a community that don't have gender-based violence. So working together, supporting each other, sharing the actions that do work and solutions that works, but also really strategizing according to to our context and the atmosphere, the political atmosphere that we are operating in, and ensuring that the activists are safe as well. Because I think
Hallelujah. Your background noise is too much. I feel like we are really straining to get you. Could you move a bit and try to get some calm behind you? Because I feel like most of our attention is behind the noise behind and the real content you're giving us. Can that be done, ma'am?
I do not have anywhere to move because it's raining, so I could probably stop from here. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, that was not my intention. You were giving something good. We just needed a bit of quiet from behind. Oh, Gloria.
Thank you, Hallelujah. Regardless, I have still picked every single word you've been mentioning. So as you conclude, just before I let you go, do we have any budgetary allocation for this fight against SGBV in Rwanda? Comparing to what Mikali just told us about Kenya, how is the situation like in Rwanda? Because it's a post-conflict state. You said there's a bit of political interference in this fight. So in terms of the allocation, could you tell us something?
Yes. Okay. I hope you can hear me a little bit, because I did still take the minutes while you're not hearing me.
It's okay, I can hear you.
Okay, good. What I can share is, yes, there is the budget allocated to that, and one of the things that we have is what we call Isange One Stop Center, which is a particular platform created for GBV victims, where they go to report, for example. So basically, there are systems in place that are sustained through those budgets, including supporting the survivors and the victims, including making sure that they are safe, and many other things. And for example, treatments, like the treatments are covered for them and many other things. So that system that I would want to reflect on is the Isange One Stop Center, which is there to support victims, which is there for them to report as much as possible. And there's a lot of awareness done to make sure that most of the Rwandans and the community members know about this particular platform so that they know this is their safe place where they can go to report. So that's something that I really recognize, and that works from the, I would say, like from the village level, from like the, how do we call it, like from the lowest county, that's how Kenyans call it, but it's like the smallest, the lowest level of the community, to ensure that people know where to report if they have faced this. And this is something that is intentionally done and sustained through the budget, as you're saying, which is budgeted for. But I always say that it's never really enough to ensure that everyone who is actually really facing these issues is well sustained, because we still have instances where the victims still go back to their perpetrators because they are sustaining them financially. So I wouldn't say it's 100% at its best, but there is some that is allocated there. And which brings me to the fact that even though there are progress and there are great platforms and there are great strategies in place, these challenges really still persist in many communities here. So that's what I could actually reflect on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And one last one for you. Is it possible to hold peaceful protests against GBV in Rwanda, just in a minute?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
Is it possible in Rwanda to have peaceful protests against SGBV, or you as an activist, you just have to be a keyboard warrior, where you are? Can you walk on the streets and sensitize people against this?
I don't think so. Me, I haven't done one. I haven't been on one, but there are what we call like gatherings that you can do through the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion. They're the ones that are organized, that can be done in the most peaceful way. But I don't think, like, as an organization, you can just organize and then walk on the streets. We don't have those here. But there are opportunities for dialogues, there are opportunities for engagement with the parliament, with the ministries, that as much as you can really be encouraged enough, or you can put on your effort to work with them and connect with them, really the value of stakeholder engagement is really there, and the opportunity for that is already available. So but with the part of, like, for example, going on the streets, they don't happen as often, but there are the platforms that we have, for example, the car free days, or where it's like a day dedicated to sports, but you can create different themes to raise the awareness. So, which is what the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion and other stakeholders have done actually this year. That they engaged in that and brought people together. They work out, they do some sports, but also give out messages for. So that's what I call a peaceful march, in my opinion. So that's what
Oh,
we have. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much, Hallelujah, for your contribution. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
the diverse ways in which things are done in various countries. So I will hand over to Sally to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Hallelujah. We'll move straight to Shaggy. I'm sure I got your name correctly. I'm sorry, Ma. We are discussing government will, we are discussing conventions, we are discussing treaties, national action plan. But I think it is time for us to shift this conversation towards a personality like you, who is currently a refugee in Kenya and also have lived conflict in Somalia, where you can share with us your experience and maybe try to situate us where you see yourself and other refugee women of Africa in the conversation towards the African Union's convention that is forthcoming in February 2025. Shwagi, are you there? Maybe I didn't call your name correctly.
Okay, if
Shwagi, are you there?
if she is not in, or if she's not, but I can see she's in, maybe she. Shaggy, could you please, I think she said
Was my
Shaggy.
good
Could you please
enough?
unmute? She's still muted. The other alternative we have is I proceed with Marion, then we'll come back to Shaggy. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Marion, I'll move over to you. You are in Uganda, and of course, all of the activists have mentioned the patriarchal setup and all that. And we know Uganda is not excused as any other country from patriarchy. But I want you to talk to us about this fight against SGBV and the readiness for the AU Convention in 2025. What do you think? Do you think we will be heard? Looking at the theme of today, you know, we are asking, can you hear us? In your opinion, do you think we are going to be heard? And what's your experience in Uganda? Marianne, if you're here. Marian also seems not to be here. So we are back to Shogi, and if we don't get a hold of her, then we can now start with the interaction from our viewers, both on TikTok, on Facebook, here on Zoom, in response to the submissions that we've had today.
Gloria, did you see my name or I'm just...
Yes.
Yeah, with Shogi. Yes, yes, because I'm not used to name me with my father name.
Okay.
Okay.
Sally, over to you. Wim, use Wim, please.
Okay, Wim, I'm sorry. Like I said before, I'm trying to get the name I could manage to pronounce. I'm sorry. That's my bad. That's my bad. Okay. I was asking that with all of these submissions and experiences shared, we are looking forward to 2025 February, which will be historic and a new tool in the hands of activists to be able to discuss issues of gender-based violence within the country. Yeah, there's this euphoria and all, and people are talking about government will. But we will want to push this conversation a bit further to find out from you, as a person who is currently a refugee in Kenya and who has also lived in a war conflict context. What do you think? What are your expectations of this convention, or what does that mean to you and the people you represent?
Okay. First of all, I have that vision about when we talk about the 16 days of gender-based violence and this stuff. For me, it's very wide idea. It's not fit in our context. And also we release an article like 16 days. It's not enough to fight GBV in Sudan because it's just an event. They collect people, but put them to celebrate with what? Because celebrate with knowing that gender-based violence happened to us. Why are we celebrating on that? How that affecting on anything? And all the time I ask myself why we didn't have our own, because we know our own tools for resistance, our own tools from fighting this, but all the time with this word, we need to follow the idea of the United Nations put to African content, and it's not fitting to us. And talking about GBV in Sudan, now it's more like SGBV, it's sexual-based violence. It's systematic crimes happened from the first day when the war happened, before 1 year, and 15th of April, 2023. And it's hard because not a lot of people know about that because we speak Arabic. And Arabic in the African content, not a lot of people know in Arabic because when we write on social media or something, just the people who speak Arabic, they will know what happened in Sudan, but not our African colleagues. And English, it's not that language we speak, and also it's a privileged language. People who study in private school who can speak English, not all of us. And after just and the first week when the war happened, the rape crime start happen. After 3 months, women be kidnapped and selling on the market. Like the idea of slavery and selling women in the market, that happened after just 3 months. And after that, being like a tool for forcing community to displace by the RSF militia, they start raping to force the family to leave their houses. Just before 2 months, 130 girls committed a suicide. They killed themselves from afraid for this crime because our community it's conservative community, and this crime it's not just happen against the victim, it's happen against your family, against your tribe, and it's have a religion consequences, and it's not something we talk about it. This is first of all. Second of all, because we don't have that law to provide rape protocol, because that Islamic regime we didn't have any access to rape protocol in Sudan. And Sudan does not agree with CEDAW agreement, but they signed for Maputo Protocol, but also with CEDAW. CEDAW, it's stigmatized in Sudan like it's against Islam. And when we talk about Maputo Protocol, not a lot of people aware of that, because as you know, for 30 years, our government tried to force us to be an Arab, in Arab content. We know nothing about African content, about African agreements, because Maputo Protocol can consider the religion, can consider the differences. But in Sudan, no, we are not belong to that African content because the regime. The system forced us to be an Arab, speak Arabic, named ourselves by Arabic names. That's why we are out of the African content. After the war, when we be displaced to East Africa, this is like the first time most of Sudanese know Africa. When they go to Uganda, to Kenya, even to South Sudan, it used to be a one country, but even when they go to South Sudan, and they say, why we are going to, for example, to Egypt or go to the Gulf, why we never know about Africa before? Why we never know about Tanzania? Why we never been here before? And even if you hear from the family, yeah, we go to Africa. It's not Africa, it's us also, but we are not familiar with that content. And that's what makes it so difficult when you talk about Sudan, and it's also South Sudan, and there's the stigma about those Sudanese who hate the Christian, who make the fight against Darfur, against South Sudanese, but it's the system, not the people. But also back to SGBV, the law, the rape protocol, and how the politician use the rape as a card to talk about what happened in Sudan. Not because they are so careful about women. No, they just bring women like a card, like to criminalize one parties of the war, like to say, yeah, those militia did that to women. And sometimes they release the videos because the RSF militia filmed the rape crimes. And the politician took that video and put it outside online without thinking about the circumstances or the sequences what will happen against those victims, just to talk about, look, that's what happened. And when we talk to our fellow, please don't share those videos. Don't talk about that. It's hard in Sudan. Women being killed after being raped because it's a shame. It's a stigma. And they say, how you want to know? People know about you. We know about Gaza because we saw videos, but how we will know about Sudan if you are not agreed to release those video? It's not like that. If your solidarity depend on see a video of women being raped, okay, we don't need that solidarity. And when it's come to African Union policies, the IGAD, and talk about let us stop the war, bring women to negotiation table, it's not, I'm sorry, but it's like, it's a joke. Because civilian, they cannot stop the war, but civilian can't help with this damage. You know, as Sudanese, we are not allowed to go to any East African country without visa, without return ticket, and we are not allowed to have an African Union passport because in 2016, Sudan stigmatized as a racism country, and that was true against the African tribe. That was true. Our regime, it was racist and still racist against the African tribe. But we are the people who paid that. We are not allowed for 13 years to have any bank account because the sanction happened to us from USA. And now when they talk about the humanitarian aid, talk about stopping the war, but in the same time, you are not allowed us even to survive. We cannot even ask help from another people, ask people to donate for helping the situation in Sudan. We've been trapped in Sudan like 1 year and 2 months now. We are out of internet. We don't have an internet in Sudan. People, they cannot talk about that. And the RSF just smuggling some of Starlink machines from Chad and this Central of Africa, and they let people go online for 1 hour equal $2. And all that, those blackout and the situation of being displacement for every time, every month you saw people being displacement, that affect on women's life be more subjected to violence. Even it's not just from the soldiers, from the families, because there's no law criminalize the domestic violence. No laws criminalize the rape happened from your husband or the rape happened from your family. And when we start to document that, it's been more hard because women feel like we are scared, and also women being raped from the people who work in humanitarian sector, coming with the international people come to help in refugee camp or something, being subjected to rape, and they cannot speak about that because they just need.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Ah.
Thank you for telling us a bit about giving us this picture and understanding about Sudan. I would love to prop you a little bit more. You're presenting to us a disconnect between Sudan with the rest of actions in the African continent. Now, given the fact that we are looking forward to February 2025, when this convention will be adopted, what are your expectations? What, like, your wish towards that? Because we've spoken about consultation here, involvement of others. I just want to find out, like an activist that you are, your interaction with other East African countries, this conversation that is going on, the things that have been shared, how we've established that human security is closely linked to gender-based violence, and you've been naming the items of human security that are largely tied to actions of gender-based violence in South Sudan. What could you share with us that are your expectations as an activist, or what you wish for as we look forward to February 2025?
More connecting with our feminism fellow, feminist comrades like Rachel. The first time when I met Rachel, we start talking about how they fight against the gender-based violence, how the Rachel group try to talk about policy, and when we start talking about what happened in our country, and we start thinking, okay, we can do something together, help women, for example, in Kenya, and help make a connecting between feminists from Sudan with Kenyan feminists, and also we work with Ugandan feminists, because the woman being displaced there. And when we learn from this experience by networking, that's perfect. I'm going to tell you a story. Just before 2 weeks, before I come to this holiday, we was walking in Nairobi, and we found a Kenyan woman being beaten by her partner on the street, and in Kililishwa, and there's a lot of security men on the street, and they just looking at her. We are just on a Uber, and we stop the Uber and start talking to the police guys, to the security guys, and they say, no, we cannot involve in that because that's her partner. And the woman, she was bleeding on the street. And when we just, all of us, been against that man, we're gonna call the police and blah, 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 and we're gonna put you in jail. And he said to us, you are not a Kenyan. Yes, I'm not a Kenyan, but I can put you in a jail. Why you beating a woman on the street? And when I start talking to the woman, let us go to the police station. And she say, no, I will not be safe anymore if I go to the police. And that when I start thinking how we can make all this advocacy about you have a right, even if you didn't know the law, you can go to the police station with the grassroots people. And I think that's what Rachel and doing it. But by networking, by talking, by solidarity between the African fellow, the African feminist in the global South, solidarity, I think we can reach something by talking to each other.
Okay. You strongly advocate for networking. And I also got from your intervention that there is need to reassure everybody that you must know a bit, maybe a bit of the law or a bit of the services that are there to take advantage of it. So in a sentence or two, what would you advise the broader feminist movement, this kind of gender-based violence conversation? What would be your key advice to other activists back in Sudan, in other countries within Africa, on how best to network and take advantage of the forthcoming convention and other existing instruments within the continent? Because I think we have a lot of it. So what would be your say about it, like advising other activists and also speaking to governments?
The government, I tell my friend all the time, we share that video from the Kenyan parliament when she talked about girls bad like me, they will be reach the house. It's not just that line, but when we make more noise, we can make people and government heard that we are being under the femicide or being under gender-based violence or being killed just to say no to our partner. Another things, gender-based violence, that thing it's a bad, but that the thing all a common ground for all of us. Being subjected to violence, it's not just because you are from here or from here. Just being a woman or being from minorities, you definitely being subjected to gender-based violence. We need to talk. We need to know what with my language, with my English, being a woman and talk about what we've been subjected to and documented these stories and try to talk and use another platform to reflect the stories about gender-based violence or documenting these stories, like the TikTok thing. In Sudan, we didn't use TikTok all the time, but like TikTok, like movies, like just grab a cup of coffee and start talking about the experience, I know we will find the solution. War is bad, but it gives us another way, another window to find hope in somewhere else.
Thank you.
And I'm thankful for this platform when you just reached me out and I was, oh, finally, I can talk in another platform, not just a Sudanese platform. I'm grateful.
You're most welcome, and we're really happy to have you give your sentiments as you are, and we're happy you are safe. We urge you to keep at it, keep doing what you're doing, and help the Sudanese women be listened to and be heard, even though they're kind of secluded right now because of the language and these things you have mentioned. So we really, really appreciate you. Alex, I have a question for you. How ready are we, in your opinion, for this AU convention next year? And do you really think that we will finally be heard? We have 30 years now, it's 30 more years. Is there anything that's going to come out of it, in your opinion? Colonel Alex.
Good, thank you very much. I think we have always been ready, and we have been heard enough. But what I think we don't have is real commitment. Looking at the scenario from Shalgi and the police looking on where somebody was being beaten, do you think the police have been really educated on what their role is? Even when you see a wife beating husband or husband beating wife. So, okay, so that's at that level, maybe the connection between the national authority and the law enforcement agencies may not be there. But as for being heard, I think all governments all over the world are aware of this thing. Some have gone further to come out with very good laws. But what we are not seeing is the commitment. So I'll be happy that in January or February, when they meet to look at this convention, the focus should be what have we done as individual countries? And if we can even support that with data, which is not so used in Africa. We do so many things, but we don't support it with data. So it becomes difficult in many occasions to even talk to what we have done, the impact we've had, and what we see doing going forward. So yes, the opportunity is there. There's still so much that can be done. There's so much that has been done. But are we going to renew our commitment to ensure that the issue of gender-based violence is addressed? So I think that, in summary, I think it's commitment, because there's so much coming out from donor agencies in terms of funding. But how are governments making sure, like our sister from Kenya said, there's no minister for gender. There's no budget. This communicates to everybody in Kenya that it's not a priority. But listening to everybody, looking at this discussion, the issue of human security has been demonstrated in almost everybody's submission. So if a government cares about the security of its people, which should be the mandate, which should be the priority of every government, then we should take GBV very serious. So commitment, I'll just sum up everything by saying we should be more committed in whatever we are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colonel. I still have a follow-up question for you as we conclude. Members and viewers, if you have any questions, kindly write them in the chat so that we can address them. Right about now, we are coming towards the end of the program. So, Colonel, just a curious question, because it was quite a little bit challenging to get a hold of men in all these positions to come and speak to this issue for this program today. But we're fortunate to have you and Mohanty. So in your opinion, do you think there is more impact when a man fronts this conversation concerning the fight against SGBV as compared to when women talk about it? Do you think women are overdoing it and forgetting the male? Or do you think it's just 50-50?
Okay, so whether we get more women talking or more men talking, it is the how we are talking. So it's more of the how part. Now, in Ghana, I mean, of course, so I'm still in the military. So in the Ghana Armed Forces, anytime you hear gender, it's like, oh, these women, they are always worrying us. Aha. It means that we have not spoken, we didn't look at the how part, the how of advocating for gender issues in general and specifically gender-based violence. So I think that the men can start talking. I like I said, I'm interested in these issues because of my work as a security person. Good. So if we can package the message well, it will not matter so much whether it's coming from women, because we know that it affects women more and they'll be talking more. Good. So if we get the men to also understand it and talk about it the way the women talk about it, I think we will make a huge impact. So we should make that effort to get more men to talk to the issue. And it will have some change because, of course, like I said, in Ghana and where I work, gender is women matters. But thank God, I understand it a bit better. So I am always ready to come in and say, hey, it's not. It is something that affects all of us. However, it affects them more. So you hear them, you hear more of them talking about it more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And in the chats, Nadifa Osman is saying it's always imported protocols, but not African. In Africa, we need each other. There's no need to send a message that man is our enemy. So that reinforces what you've just said, that it's not who it is from, it is how the message is packaged and what the message is. So thank you so much. Today has been an Eastern African affair. We have managed to talk about Rwanda, talk about the situation in Kenya. We missed out on Uganda, but we hope we catch her next time. We've had from Khartoum and Somalia. So we are grateful and we hope that come February, the message will be there. As much as we are holding this mini sessions here, our point is to drive this awareness across and to ensure that the message goes as far as possible so that the commitment that we are seeking towards this fight against SGBV is made and is acted on. So that's what we are looking forward to. In our next seminar, we will have panelists from Southern Africa, and we are looking forward to, again, having a mixed panel. We hope that will be possible, and we'll be telling you the date and the time. Otherwise, unless Sally has something to say?
Nothing, just to say it's been a learning exercise, and we are happy with the understanding that there is no way we can talk gender equality without looking, gender-based violence without looking its relationship to human security, peace, and development. And I pray as activists and the participants who are here, who intervene in their communities to make it better, should continue to make the most out of this conversation and to valorize that contribution they are making towards ensuring human security, for by extension, they are speaking to issues of gender-based violence. And we also look forward to a February 2025 where activists and other civil society actors will be able to pick up the convention and try to give it life in their different states, since we have established that there is need to continually engaging governments to ensure their will follows their signatures to such conventions. We look forward to the Southern African conversation, and one day we look forward to an African continent conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for joining. We keep making the necessary noise, and I believe it won't be in vain. Have a happy 2025 and see you next year. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.
I think there's a hand up. David.
There's a hand?
Yeah,
sorry,
I saw David's hand. Is it, I also did.
Yes,
sorry,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I joined in rather late because I got the link rather late. It was wonderful listening in anyway. And I think it was a very good exposition. Oh, can you hear me? Am I clear?
Yeah, you are. Please, right on.
Good, because we've ended. I don't want to maybe talk much, but I think just the last question on the participation of men. I think it is extremely important that men participate to be able to bring to the fore the importance of GBV. If not, it will continue to create the impression out there that it is basically the issue of women, because that is the issue, the erroneous impression that this issue of GBV created was. It was initially heralded by women, and the how aspects created the impression that everything is about women, everything is about women. And so the more men jump into the fray and begin to add their voice, okay, to this very important topic, it will demystify, okay, the issue of gender as being specifically, okay, a woman affair. And then people will now begin to appreciate, okay, the need for everyone to be on board and to pay the necessary attention and give the necessary effort to addressing the main issues that concern this GBV. And so that is my little bit that I want to add to it. And I will also suggest that in subsequent deliberations, maybe we can do some more exposition on the linkage between GBV and the human security aspect. I think it was very, very short. I saw that Sally was trying as much as possible to draw that linkage by her question. And I think that so much more digging could be done to draw that linkage between the GBV and then the human security, because it is extremely important. And we can link it not just only be with women, and we can draw in the children and also the youth, the young men that are involved in violence. Thank you very much. And then probably if I get a link, I'll join you in the Southern Conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. And we also have a message from Manaisha Karim. She says it was great exposure. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. It's high time that we talk on GBV globally. A woman is a figure to be appreciated, not abused. Thank you so much for that powerful statement. Unless there's any other hand, goodbye and Happy New Year. Thank you so much. Goodbye.